Welcome everybody. I'll open this meeting and call for apologies. We have one from Ian. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Tony, all in favour? Aye. It's carried. Public forum, I'll welcome to the table. Ian.
I guess that becoming a bit of a habit, so much of a habit, I could almost say you're my community board.
And you're our complainant.
Sorry? I'm deaf as well. Industrial accident, you're fine. My mother said it was put on.
You've got 5 minutes starting now.
I'll just, well, take the mask off if that's okay with others. Mr. Chairman, board members, thanks once again for the opportunity to speak. I've talked to Chris Winter quite a bit over the last couple of days, and we've looked at the resume survey results. Chris has not seen all of the comments which he's asked for. He's sent some emails to the council and asked for that. He's never had anything back for whatever the reason is. And I'm still asking for all of the results in full form, but of course I've got to wait till the 1st of August because the council in their wisdom has stretched me right out to the 20 working days, which the Act says they can do that, albeit that the results were available back on the 6th of July. I just want to make some point to the ECB that at this stage, and I think it's the starting point of everything I've read in the survey to date, but we haven't looked at it, is that the survey clearly shows that the local locals, so for instance, Bridge Hill residents, have a much higher use of the reserve than outside of the Bridge Hill area, even considering those in the Vincent ward. And I liken this to, say, for instance, a person living in Molyneux Estate, they probably want to walk the dog in the pines on either side of the main road. So you go where the amenity is, and as we keep saying, that is an amenity. Likewise, central town, people probably go to Pioneer Park. People further up Tarver Street probably go to the Shaky Bridge areas. Shaky Bridge, sorry. Shaky Bridge. So I would like to hope that the board can make a favourable decision on the retention of the trees, and if they have to contain some wildings that are in and around there, so be it. There's a couple of things that still stick in my throat. It was a biased survey in terms of the question asking about the chopping down of the trees, calling them wildings, and people absolutely knew that some of them or a lot of them were planted, and they really are an amenity, amenity tree. So I hope that the board later on can make a favourable decision. And there's 2 huge aspects which have never been covered publicly or out there from any perspective of the council. They've been totally silent on protecting wildlife, and more of a worry, if you look around the whole of the world, they've been totally silent on carbon sinking. And a block of trees like that has thousands of tonnes of carbon tied up in it. So that's possibly all I really want to say. But I'd just like to say this, and this is not aimed at anybody on the VCB at all, but I'll say it anyway. I'm not sure how this goes forward from here. I've read the thing on the agenda and it talks about something later in the year, but I don't know if that was an old statement or a current statement. I'd just like to say this with the very, very brave person that chopped those trees down prior to the triannual local body elections and leave an absolute mess up there. And that's not a threat or a warning, it's just a thing, because people are starting to arc up about some of this stuff. And it's spread to places like Boot Hill. Bike people are starting to get twitchy. Up around the airport where they bike. It's more than just there. And people need to know, and I think a lot of people in this room know, or some do, that It's never ever been scientifically DNA that the worry of the genuine welding ponds across the river have come from that site. Even Phil Murray has said he can't categorically say, given that there's pines in the whole of the Alex Basin. So that's really all I've got to say. I've got another part I'd like to say, but time's probably got me when someone wants to ask the question. Who knows?
About 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll get cut off, it's okay. The policy that was put out by the council on the 6th, which didn't go out to consultation, which I believe they've heard there, to me has a conflict with the flow chart that the CWG group have in terms of money flow. And it appears to me that they dictate to the council, use that word dictate, what should be chopped down. And then the council in turn give them money through some channel. However you want to look at it, it's a very hard thing to find out. It borderlines on, I'll use the word, corruption. I don't mean in the sense of, living in Sicily with whatever, but there's a conflict there. And quite honestly, it was a massive failure to not go back to consultation for that tree policy, because it circumvented what you good people may or may not do.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Any questions, members of council?
As a compromised position, how would you feel about staged removal, that is removing part and using the remaining trees then as a windbreak for plantings of natives?
Can you just keep your questions to the actual survey, but not going to debating the process?
The survey results mentioned staged removal as an option. There are quite a few people. How's that? How do you feel about that?
Well, contrary to what people believe, but the residents up around where I live, it's not a one-man band. It's not just Ken Church or I'll tell you that now. There's a group of us loosely knitted together. So I'll say, as we speak, and there's some individuals planting natives there now. They're using the canopy for protection. Water's a huge problem. But in terms of compromise, if people could just realise that the seeded baby of a tree, yes, it's a wilding pine, and there are some up there. Anyone that's got a reasonable eye for straight lines or has talked to Dick Shorman know that those trees are planted and they've become an amenity in terms of shade and a place to grow. There's possibly some scope, but the trouble is, Ian, and I'm not knocking it out of the park already, if you listen to Phil Murray and others, it's all or nothing. And it's a shame people think like that. Conversely, people could say that about Ken Churchill and Chris Winter and some of the good folk that use the place regularly, that won't accept they have to stay. Yeah, that would be an idea, it'd be great. But the logging contractor, how he got the contract, I'll never know. The logging contractor, he would find it difficult to selectively log, but if you throw enough money at things, you can do anything where there's a will to do. So it's a short answer to your question. There's always room for compromise, Ian. Always.
Members, any further questions? Ken, thank you.
No worries.
No doubt we'll be seeing you again.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Right, members, our next item, confirmation of the minutes of our meeting held on the 13th of June. Do I have a mover that they are true and correct record? Somebody who was here? Yeah, thank you. A seconder? Roger, all in favour? Against, carried. Just reminding people your declarations of interest. Any alterations, change and additions?
The one that I mentioned last time, which is in regard to being a trustee on Kodak for Arts Trust, was not make its way onto the.
Consider yourself removed from that.
Added.
Edited, I should say. Welcome.
Thank you. All right, I'll take this.
It is.
Thank you. You've got the order.
Suppose if you go into a bank wearing that, no one would really mind, would they?
I wasn't wearing this.
Exactly.
I should be fine, I guess. Thank you again for the invitation. Probably 6 months since I've last spoke to the group here. What's really quite nice is Old Central just carries on carrying on. So just a few things. I hope next time I'll have the okay to have the area commander with me. She did want to come along today, introduce herself, make her known to you guys and viewers. Unfortunately, she was double booked and got COVID this week. Just as we're having a stay here on Monday, so Friday, it was just unfortunate. But next time I'd love to introduce her to her, and she's done very well. Current staffing in the Central Otago full area is we are full at the moment, and we have an area liaison position coming up. Peter is relocating back to Rotorua to Stefania, where he comes from. So we'll be looking for an area liaison / ethnic officer coming back in. Another positive thing around Project Evolve is I should get a third rural liaison position and another detective that will come in on well. So really full staff, and it's really starting to shape up really well with our deployments. Just then a few things, at least we have goals, and the 3 of them realistically are safe homes, safe communities and safe roads. 3 pillars, and what we do there is we focus heavily around deployment there. That's around New Zealand, but we can deploy differently to our needs locally. Predominantly, in the home space, ongoing family harm, we no different to anywhere else. Different stresses, different health, mental health stuff, different family breakdowns. And in that space in the last 6 months, although it has been consistent and not overly worked in that area, a lot of it, we try and get away from putting people in court if we can, and try and work through issues with our stakeholders and partners around trying more support in the areas to try and get them out of that cycle of crime and work through it. So that's, something we're working through is something called the Understanding Policing Delivery, and that goes right across about alternative actions and how we can be smarter around getting people out of the cycle of court, jail, out of society. And that's something that we're really focusing on and well advanced here in Central Otago to the rest of the country, which is really cool. We've already tried this stuff. It's positive, doesn't always work, but if we stopped at the first hurdle, we never make any advancements in where we're wanting to get to the end of the day. So the family harm stuff's still there. The youth, there is youth, I'm not going to say crime incidents that happen. They spike during the holiday periods when they get bored. We're doing very good work in that space, and quite frankly, it's not to where the cities are, which we're quite lucky about. In the community space, we are noticing quite a bit of mental health work, and I think that's societal. Could be a number of things: the illnesses, the COVIDs, financial hardships, probably that we haven't quite got to yet, and there'll be more of that. That's consistent, and it's tricky in that space because of resourcing. I'm not suggesting the police, but sometimes it takes a lot of time to get the partners activated, and then there might be transport to Wakaria and other areas like that. And start to have a massive geographical sort of a map to be dealing with there. Also, just around drug supply and drug stuff, we're always working on that, always. We probably one of our most recent case, it's just been remanded in custody today, in Dunedin. Bit more work done there, but I would label that person probably lower level drug supply. Be a really good result, a lot of work put in there, but it's not just the drug supplying, it's also the harm in the community around lower level standover, threatening sort of stuff, and a lot of demand in that picture. So yeah, one legal that's been dealt with and run in custody. The second, we're hoping that in the coming days we'll probably sort that out. So at lower level, a nice point to note is that Otago Lakes are just creating an organised crime group out of Queenstown. Because of party atmospheres / Wanaka, we will be also able to plug into that unit with anyone that we get information on, and they'll do the work for us, which will be quite nice. That'll be Detective Sergeant 4. So that's been created as well. Just in the road space, we always are focused on this. I make no apologies around my area. If people are getting stopped for doing the wrong thing, if people are drink driving or impaired driving, they will be stopped and dealt with. Unfortunately, we had a fatal on last Monday, and I have a feeling with the stuff we've come across that is impaired, the footage out of the Tesla shows what it is. It's pretty open and out there, metal assist the corner, but those things happen all the time. We've had numerous injury crashes. People don't generally talk about serious injury, and financial aspect, they cost more to the country than fatal crashes generally because of the ongoing hospital work and ongoing stuff there. There was also a fatal crash, unfortunately, a young person up on one of the tracks up behind St. Bathans. That could have been multiple crash. It's a road we can't get to, and police was a poor decision in the day. I can guarantee you it's really, really upsetting for fun. But you should see my staff out more and more in certain spots doing the breath tests and stuff like that. We're getting more buy-in from Queenstown in regards to the, it's not so much the Rural Drink Drive team now, but more another acronym, sorry, the SRT, that they get around the area too, and you know, just pop up in the areas that they need to test now and then just to make sure that the public can see us. Just in around COVID demand, you must be one of the lucky employers in the Royal We as an employer from my area. We seem to be only getting 1 or 2 so often, so our demand for our workforce has been really, really good, and it hasn't really been affected a great deal. Might have spiked this week, but there's also been a bit of flu around too, which I guess a lot of the workplaces have sort of got that as well. Yeah, so we've been able to deploy effectively and pretty positive. We're in a good spot.
If there's any questions?
A rather disturbing group has emerged in other parts of the country. I have not heard of it in our parts, in Central Otago, of letting down the tyres of certain select vehicles, and that could potentially lead to serious accidents if someone drove on a partly deflated tyre, not realising it's a problem, it could roll off the rim and they could turn up on a corner and they could turn
Traumatic, yeah.
So is there a process in place to deal with this, which seems to me to be an emerging group?
Our area will work like that. If there's something that's not here at the moment, we keep an eye on that stuff. We won't put a strategy in place until we start seeing stuff. You've actually got to put your energy into stuff that you know is happening. It could be a nail in the tyre too, and that could happen any day of the week. So if there is a picture, we like to say for a spate of thieves, cars or burglaries, absolutely. There are things, but stuff like that that's happening up in metropolitan areas with activists and whatnot. Not so much here yet. If we started seeing something like that, we'd absolutely put strategy together and different tactics to try and, you know, reduce any harm from for our community, but not at the moment.
Yep. If there's any further questions?
Thank you. I work in the rural space and I was just interested to know, you mentioned mental health in general before. Has there been a noticeable increase in mental health call-outs in the rural space in the last, well, what did you say, 6 months?
Yeah, they're in all areas. And people
So
can-
increase in
yeah,
all areas?
Yeah, am I going to say increase in all areas? I'd say consistency of all areas, and that can change with people coming and going. And I say that without pointing at certain organisations, and you share it come and go, and they all have different needs. Mental health, they may have other stuff in the world in other areas. That spikes, it'll come, there'll be a group of it, and then it'll go.
Right.
So I would say consistent, more than a rise.
Yeah.
And we may have 2 months where it's really quite calm, and eventful is the word we use, but it's always there. And that would give us more of a challenge. The further out in rural it is, the bigger challenge it is for us to deploy at the leave other areas person and get the AO / mental health people activated and working in that space. So I wouldn't say it's spiking, but that's certainly in every area. There's cases this week, actually, it's a matter of home care and stuff that certainly needed acute help. So yeah, it's an all
It's definitely a general malaise post-COVID, isn't it? It's affecting people.
Yeah, there's different stuff. We are noticing different stresses. Well, COVID's going to be anything. We're forecasting it to carry on different stuff. So it's something else next year. So there are stresses coming from all sorts of financial stuff will kick in shortly. We thought with the start of COVID it was going to kick in. I think we're in a bumpy ride for a while financially, all our communities. So it's sort of, there'll be stresses there, but you know, we've got to have people around in all organisations that are there getting ready to go. You know, a lot of the pressure, but they want to get, you know, people work towards, you know, the right outcome. Doesn't matter how many people we've got. We're a good country to be able to get stuff done.
Nothing else, Chris? Thank you, Clint. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that I can extend a welcome to Paula, Inspector America, maybe next one, and just give you guys a bit of knowledge who she is and what she gets out. And
Well, that would probably be an ideal opportunity post-October and the elections and the new board.
lovely.
Make a note.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thanks.
Next item, 22.5.3 on page 18 of our agenda. The election of a deputy chair. Wayne, this is yours.
Thank you. Local Government Act 2002 allows for the community board to elect a deputy chair if it wants to. And with the resignation of Russell a number of weeks ago, that position is now vacant. So certainly interpreted the act as saying you can elect a deputy if you want, but you don't have to. So so there's 2 questions to be asked today of you. Do you wish to elect a deputy chair? And then working on from that, if the answer is yes, then actually doing it.
Well, let's deal with the first question. Do you think for one more meeting, it's really, no, it's not, is it? So there's your answer.
Thank you very much. I move in a second to that.
Good. We have Charlene
Yeah.
moved and a second. All in favour? Against? Carried.
So who are those moving seconds again? Charlene. Well, thank you.
Item 22.5.4, page 21 on our agenda, notice of intention to prepare a reserve management plan, Omakau Recreation Reserve. And I welcome Nikki and Gordon to the table.
Hi. Hi. So hopefully you have read the report. We thought that now seemed as good a time as any to look at preparing a reserve management plan for Omakau with the community working really hard on a new hub there and planning having been approved for that project. There'll be a lot of stuff going ahead. There's already been a lot of consultation done in the community around use of that space. So it seemed like a no-brainer, but I thought I would see what you think. So I've attached quite a bit there. You may have had a look at the feasibility study and the report that came to you in December 2019 with that feasibility study and where the community board approved and other such.
If I get this right, Nikki, the decisions this board's already made and the funding which has been agreed to for the LTP process
That's right.
is that the hub is being developed as we speak.
Yeah.
This is now the management plan over that whole reserve to overlook it, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
So there's quite a few activities that happen in that space with the campground there as well and the rugby field
looking at,
and the golf course.
definitely looking
It's a
at,
high use area, yeah,
Lots of groups.
yeah, lots of.
just that it was brought up earlier in our, it was only time that here we are, with this report, which is a glorious addition to the Omakau landscape when that community is currently being bashed severely by flooding. And I think it's an opportunity, I think, for this board to recognise the fact that the board's very conscious of what's going on out in Omakau, and you will be watching this space as far as remediation is concerned. You know, it's not all. This is a good thing which is happening in Omakau. There's a fair amount of bad things have been happening in the last few days. Questions of Nikki or board members? We're not burning it.
This is what Omakau wants for itself.
That's right, yeah, we're just supporting, what is already a community-led initiative, but bringing it more into the council spaces.
Well, I'll move A and B. Do I have a seconder? One second. All in favour?
Aye.
Yes, carry.
Thanks.
Linda. Afternoon.
You should all hopefully remember that in October last year, I came to you to make a resolution to reclassify part of the town belt immediately adjacent to the northern reservoir. That process is well underway and the construction of the reservoir is also well underway. To test the reservoir, the reservoir each needs to be filled to be leak checked and then emptied again. And once the new reservoir has been checked, filled, emptied, and is in perfect working order, the existing reservoir will also be emptied and then leak checked and maintained and brought up to scratch as required. And to do that, we need to
Water's got to go somewhere.
yeah, the water's going to go somewhere. I was just trying to think what we need to put that water somewhere so that it can drain in a controlled manner. And the proposal today is to grant a lease to council to facilitate the construction of a soakage basin and a bund to obviously protect that and reduce the visual effects and let that water just fall away naturally. And it's at the outfall of an existing outfall that was on the reserve prior to it being vested as central reserve.
Any questions of the members? Any comments? There being none. Oh, comment, Anna?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you. And it's nice to read your report. I do. It's more of a comment rather than a question, and it's I guess water is a precious resource.
Yes.
We're talking about essentially it's clean water that's been pumped into the tank and then drained. Technically, yeah.
Technically. So the thing about the testing is that it wouldn't need to be treated
Yes.
for that purpose.
Sure.
You would expect the water that's in the existing reservoir to have been treated, and if they're filling it to empty it, for that purpose, then
And this
and it is health and safety to make sure that it's all working.
absolutely, yeah, and I totally get that. I guess my question is around it's a really temporary situation that we're talking about, in 5 years.
Yes, because the long-term goal is that it will actually, the outflow pipe that has been in there, which has never had such a huge quantity of water through, is that it will be hooked into the stormwater system and then it will actually be dealt with briefly after.
So I guess my comment is, because we're dealing with something that is a precious resource, we have a massive river running past us here. I just wonder if there's an opportunity to potentially create more plantings or amenity plantings or beautification with that 5-year drainage of water into the soakage pit. I just wonder if there's an opportunity to perhaps divert some of that and create some plantings that need that 5-year, because most plantings around here, give them 3 years of water, they're established, they can do their thing after that.
The issue that you might have is that it is not a permanent disposal field, so there could be obviously maybe a small lake's worth of water there one day.
Yeah.
Perhaps none the next, and may not be again for quite a period of time, so that there could be risks associated with that.
Yeah, that's my only comment. Precious resource into the ground.
Look, I affect any housing around there.
No, so that's why they are digging that soakage basin in and putting the bund and fencing around it. So the fencing is obviously for safety purposes, and the bund will actually be made of the dirt that's excavated out of the hole, and then of course at the end, when it comes to being finishing and dealt with, that will all be put back in, and the fencing will be taken down, and that can be revert to its specific purpose.
Is there an option for the bund to be softened with a little bit of water, low care?
I think that would probably maybe add an additional cost that might not be conducive to the budgets in the long run, because it's obviously going to be all pushed back in and cleared out to be cemetery. Yeah,
It's a temporary.
short term.
Short term.
We're hoping it shouldn't actually take as long as that, but because of the 3 waters and changing, it's better to know that it's covered going forward.
Any further discussion, folks? I'll ask somebody to move A and B and C, please.
I'm happy to move that.
Colleen, second it. Finlay, all in favour?
Okay.
Against? Carried.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good. Patios.
With that, we're ready. So this is just an information report with the, I guess, the high level results of the survey that was undertaken over the last up to 6 weeks on the proposed development plan for the half-mile recreational field. And from it, the March meeting was determined that full report for decision will be presented to the new board after the election. So this is just for your information at this stage, but if you've asked any questions on the survey or the plan.
So this is for our information at this stage. What's the next step? What is the next?
I guess the next step will be to analyse that and determine some options for the board to consider, whether that's removing the lines in the entirety, staging, not removing them, those sort of options, and the reasons for and against those options.
So through the chair, it would be to pick up the report that has been left on the table and progress that matter to the board.
So does that mean that the next board, when this is put back to the table, then they'll get all the information, like the information gathering, evening and Chris Winter's report and all those other aspects as well, rather than just this report?
Yes, we will need to pull all that together.
So they'll be fully informed.
Yeah, that will, the report when it's, the report that's been left on the table has a whole high level of detail, and this is the next step. So we will need to wrap it all up in a report to the board. Yeah.
And so there'll be no film between potential.
No, there needs to be a report to the board to pick this up.
And that will be coming in November.
Can't say with certainty because I'm not sure after the election
Yeah.
what the program looks like. swearing in of members and what, and induction.
It'd be late this year,
So not sure.
early 23.
Yeah, as soon as we can get it to the board, we will.
Roger.
Just with,
Sorry.
sorry about that.
No,
Sorry.
that's all right.
Just with respect to this high level, will the next board have access to the actual comments as they're written by the submitter?
We will take our advice from the comms team, and the reason why they're not put on is people don't know that we're sharing their comments, and their comments can identify who they are or where they live. There could be privacy matters, so we need to always look at that very carefully, and that's why we've summarised the themes rather than provided the actual comments. And that's what we have also provided to the gentleman who was in the public forum, would have received that today.
Roger.
As I've mentioned in the past, I'm uneasy with your use of the word wilding. And because you've described all the pines at the half mile as wilding, I believe. And I've searched through numerous sources, the regional council, et cetera, for a clear definition of wilding. And after many hours, I think she came up with one from New Zealand Farm Forestry Association. Says wildings are the natural regeneration or seedling spread of introduced trees. So if they've been planted, they are not, by that definition, wilding.
Not by that definition, but there is a definition in the policy adopted by the council. But that's probably not a matter that we should debate here when this is an information only.
It's perhaps an ambiguous word to be using in a public questionnaire that we might.
So from the perspective of the I guess organisations who control these trees, it's about the species of trees, not whether they were planted or spread by wind. It's their propensity to spread that makes them a wilding under that definition.
I think clarification, sorry, comment on that, perhaps, yeah, but I thought about that as well. Perhaps clarification would have been useful in the survey to say this is how we classify wilding.
Yeah, it would have been.
Any further comments or questions?
Well, just regarding the policy that went through council, or the last council meeting, regarding wilding pines, because that was initiated after the survey went out, that wouldn't really be taken into account in this case, would it?
Yes. With the report, you haven't got the report yet, you left it to lie on the table and you haven't made a decision yet. That's my initial thought, but we need to sit down and look at that when the report comes to you.
The incoming board will be given a comprehensive background to this issue, including the report, which is actually, if you recall, going back to our was the 4th June meeting, wasn't it? It's the early one, that March meeting. That is the report which has been left on the table, subject to the survey.
Yeah. So the report won't change, it'll be the amendments that go with it and the information that is gathered since, right? Including the DOC report around life. DOC company report. Remember in that meeting, they said that they would do a life report, like around living species and things in that space.
With them and see what.
Trudy was in there.
Yeah.
We haven't seen anything as far as that's concerned. They did make,
They said that that's part of what they do,
Yeah.
and that they would do that in that space.
some of the requests coming from the submitters to that.
Yeah. But the original report and what we're talking about,
Yeah.
as far as this goes, won't change, it'll just be the amendments.
There's been no further discussion. I'll move that we receive the report. Do we get a seconder? Anna, all in favour? Right. Yes, carried. Your worship.
Right. Okay, big report today. So last week I attended alongside Councillor Ali, particularly me and Neil Gillespie and CEO Sanchez, the LGNZ conference. We had panel discussions on a broad range of topics, including reimagining local government, co-governance, environmental wellbeing, economic wellbeing, social wellbeing and cultural wellbeing. I don't have to sit through another panel discussion this year, that would be fine by me. We also heard from guest speakers, including Prime Minister Ardern, Local Government Minister Mahuta, Economic Development Minister Nash, Environment Minister Parker, talking on RMA reforms, and Simon Watts, the opposition spokesperson on local government. That they were very worthwhile talks. We had a breakfast session speaker, Cam Calcoon. If you ever have a chance to hear this guy speak or go on to talks that was on there, just inspiring. Young man with cerebral palsy, utter inspiration. He climbed Kilimanjaro despite his massive challenges. And as many with cerebral palsy, he has trouble speaking, and his attitude to that was that's just his accent, which I thought was just brilliant. We also heard from Dr. Lucy Honey on resilience. She's a psychologist dealing with resilience when her teenage daughter was killed in a car accident, so she had some real life experience. It was a very moving and empowering speech. Probably the most important part of the event was a talk by the Future for Local Government panel, who highlighted items for their report for future focus. I'll put that on in the loop this week just because there's so much more here. Also attended the rural and provincial sector meeting in Wellington a couple of days after our last meeting of this board. That was the first time that sector had been face to face for over a year. We had Minister Mahuta speak on the Three Waters. Really troubles me, and Council's put in its submission as its fundamental problem with the reforms, keeping in mind that the submissions are on the bill and realistically aren't on whether the reform should happen or not. But they have not put in that bill, and I can't get a surety that in the next bill we will have standardised pricing. So they've intimated, suggested, indicated all along that a cubic metre of water would cost the same in Christchurch as it would in Cromwell, or if you need a connection, it would be the same. To the extent that I've looked back at the dashboards we were given 2 years ago, and every council and NCDD was said that their cost would be $1,680 per household a year. So they plainly intended it, but it's not there. It's not guaranteed in legislation. That troubles as we've put in the submission in Central Otago more than anywhere, because we know how we got dealt to by the Electricity Authority with their Royal Customised Price Path, where their philosophy was that costs fall where they lie. So that's one government agency with a philosophy dealing with a monopolised utility, which water is. It would terrify me and make the whole thing. We'd lose almost all of our local, we'd lose all our local control and have a smattering of influence remain for no benefit. We'd just wind up with the same costs. So really, really pushing that point. It's very frustrating. Mr. Parker also spoke at Rural and Provincial on the Resource Management Act. Actually had a really interesting discussion with him afterwards. I was at getting a drink of water at the water fountain in the public area of Wellington Airport, and he was there. So we got yarning, and one thing led to another, and I ended up saying that the problems we had a couple of years ago of people putting the cardboard boxes in with the glass recycling and so forth, that stopped our glass being able to be crushed. And he pointed out that, if we did, then he went into a whole lot of parliamentary speak I didn't understand, that would solve the problem. Rang up his private secretary and said, we should get that under control fairly soon. We'll get an order in council passed that will allow councils to issue infringement notices to people who put the wrong stuff in the wrong wheelie bins. At the moment, all we can do is confiscate the bin. So we'll stop collecting. So that was quite good. And then around the corner came Jacinda, and she said that was a good idea too. I was like, I kind of like this country where you can sort things out outside a water fountain at a public part of the airport. Simon Watts, that I mentioned before, government opposition spokesperson, he seems very informed in his portfolio, which he'd only had for about 6 weeks at that stage. And we also had a lawyer and Wairoa Mayor, Craig Little, who spoke on a rates review case in the High Court that Wairoa just successfully defended. I won't go into the details of that just because I've got a lot here, but it was a little council taking on the big guys and they won, which was great to see. I attended the CoLab business breakfast at the packing shed the following week. This group's growing from strength to strength. There are over 30 people attending this meeting, and it's a very positive business group. And I'm looking forward to the next meeting tomorrow morning. I attended the opening night for Central Cinema and was pleased to see that group in such good heart. And it was a pleasure to meet and talk with several new members of what appears to be a very organised and positive committee. I attended my first ever Matariki ceremony, and like all I attended such events, I found it really rewarding. It was just excellent standing in a circle at dawn thinking of people lost over the last year and then contemplating plans and dreams for the year ahead was quite uncomfortable actually, but ultimately rewarding. That same weekend, Linda and I attended a brilliant dinner prepared by Nivan men who had been learning cooking skills under a government program. Really, really good. One of the things I noted was they had a string band playing. When was the last time you heard a Vanuatu string band playing in Central Otago? And I had to go into the new CEO of Seasonal Solutions and said, this is a really important part of our culture here now. And how good would it be in Clyde when people are doing the river track and the Lake Dunstan Trail had a string band in the afternoon playing, and you know, it's a shame we don't hear them as much.
Part of Blossom Festival this year, the busking and that.
Excellent, great to hear. Well done, team. I was lucky enough to have a tour of the Lake Dunstan water supply earlier this month. It's great to see the main building up and good progress on the interior works. And it will be an excellent day, I am assured, in April next year when the tap finally gets turned, bringing fully compliant water to Clyde and Alex and much reduced lime content to Alexandra. Spoke at the Alexandra Lions Club on the 7th of July. The topic was 5 predictions for Central Otago in 5 years' time, which was a lot of fun. I mentioned it to Matt Lanham, who's our incredible economic development officer manager, and he went, oh, hang on, I've got a paper here, and within moments had come up with a paper from 2020 that a think tank had done on 10 and 20 year predictions for Central, well, more for Alex than Central. Oh, no, it was for Central. Interesting to note that many of those 10-year predictions are coming right around about now. So that was a really good night with lots of interesting discussions afterwards. Wednesday, 13th of July, I hosted newly anointed Associate Minister for Local Government and Civil Defence Minister Kieran McAnulty in this room. He arrived with an entourage of 5 others. If you get in a meeting with a minister and they bring bureaucrats with them, it's always a good sign. When they come on their own, not so much, because nothing gets done. And met with a number of councillors and senior staff. We're not sure, but senior staff think it's the first time the minister has ever visited CODC. And he's doing that as he's trying to get around every rural council in the country before the election. That's 55 of them, so pretty good effort. Obviously, last week's downpour and subsequent flooding, and especially of the Omako wastewater treatment plant, were a great disappointment. It's been a bit of criticism that the ponds weren't shifted when this happened in 2017, but if you get that thrown at you, there's a few things need to be noted. Firstly, as far as we're aware, that 2017 event was the first time since the pond was opened in 1965 that it was breached by the river. Pretty much going to be climate change. We know it's going to happen more and it needs to be moved, but it's not just as simple as moving the ponds because it's part of the whole integrated system. So design's being done on it. Staff have been working on that for the last 2 years, but there's just a lot more to it than people would think. And Kieran McAnulty, as Civil Defence Minister, actually gave me a ring the day after all that happened, just checking everything was all right. So he's a guy who's pretty dedicated, I think. So that's my report all up. It has been a very busy few weeks. Happy to answer any questions.
Do you think that with the ponds, as an example, that there's a space for us to have more conversation with the community about the less sexy things that are happening? Like, and I'm not sure how that happens with communications and stuff, and I know there's only limited Facebook posts you can do and stuff, but I just think you bring up a really clear point of what we were talking about earlier, which was the fact that we were going to be discussing how hard and how beautiful that is, but actually on the other side of the river, it's a bit of a shit show. And but average people and people around this table don't know all the work that's gone in over the last 2 years that you've just talked about into planning to move that and change it. And I'm just wondering, how do we get those stories out to the community? Because even though it's not beautiful and it's not a tree planting and it's not kissing the baby's head, that's what people
You've got to get the basics right.
Need to know, right?
People need to know. Yeah, look, I think our communications team for SIS does a great job, and perhaps it's the emphasis. Yeah, unfortunately, lately it's just been reacting to all the things and still doing it with road closures and stuff. I guess it's down to us too as elected members a fair bit to do our bit in conversation, but yeah, it's just a matter of prioritising because I don't know how many posts Maria puts up a day with the team, but there's a lot goes out, and sometimes maybe that stuff, you know, if a design for the ponds has gone into, you know, the team to get the design, it's gone to consultants, we can forget about it, and it might not hurt to just say, hey, you know, we're still working away at this, it's ticking away. But It's the same for the 135 bridges we're probably going to have to replace in the next 30 years and things like that. They're not sexy, but if you don't get them right, then all the other stuff falls to bits. It does, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a solution, but I'm
No.
just saying,
Yeah,
even if there was, I don't know, like a digital space in the library or something where those kind of informations were put up, so when you're walking through, people can see
yeah.
all the bits and pieces that are happening. I don't know, but I just think it's, there's a lot of people who are moaning but don't necessarily know what's going on behind the scenes. And we didn't know all that was going on until, recently as well. So I think
No, I'll follow up.
thinking outside the box for information would be awesome.
Would it be helpful? Just wondering, would it be helpful also for community boards to get a copy of the council minutes?
They're all made available online.
True.
Thank you, Tom. Any further questions? I'll move your report.
Thank you, Martin.
Or seconder. Anna, all in favour?
No.
Yes, carried. Following up from what Tim was saying about the submissions to Three Waters, thanks to Ian and Lindley for their work they've done in putting material together as far as submissions concerned. That's really appreciated, because that was a fairly taxing document to prepare. Council meeting on the 6th. Some issues which came up, we've already discussed earlier about council planning to progress with the affordable housing, but I think the one which is probably some quite a profound effects on our neck of the woods is the approval of the bylaws to change the road speeds around our neck of the woods. Like Connell is now 80 k's, and how that's going to go down, well, we'll just wait and see. And there's these further declines being extended, but then there's more roads being discussed, subject to further consultation, which is Gilligan's Gully, Blitz Gully, Brewgrowers Road out at Clyde. So yes, it's something that people are going to start getting used to. They're not allowed to poodle up at 110 k's. It's going to be 80, and there's going to be lots of tickets issued. I can guarantee that. Two things which happened since our last meeting, which I just want to note. We have lost two of the matriarchs of this community. Dr. Annie Manning, who was the late Johnny and Manning's wife, and Mary Belt, who was John Belt's wife, and two very strong, staunch women in our community who have made massive contributions over the years. And I'd just like to note that at Mary's funeral, her coffin was festooned with paper flowers because she was just renowned for making paper flowers for the Blossom Festival. And that's basically really not a great deal else to add. I'll move all these collectively, I think. I'll go around to start my left. Roger, mental records.
Martin, you need to do your one.
I'll do my report. Second. Roger, thank you.
Okay, my report. I had the usual meetings of the District Museums, of the Creative Writers Circle and of the Arts Trust. But there are particular events which I want to talk about, outline in first one, Winter Stella. The opening was again a illustration of just what brilliant people there are in the community. And news from the museum I've had is that the number of people going through the exhibition is very significant. So it's a great success. I took part in the planting at Shaky Bridge, that's organised by Bev Thompson of KACB, who's put money into that. And one interesting procedure they used was to to advertise it in the local community, and the end result was it had about 25 or something people come. It was very well supported by the local community. I went to the cinemas opening of the foyer, the new foyer, the meeting room in its guise as a cinema foyer, and that was again well supported. I inspected the river track. I went from the wrong section as far as Fraser River and back from this end, from the Alex end. That was before the floods, so it was to look at the trees and clearing that had taken place. But of course, that has all been rather changed now. The chainsaws will be out again. I had a meeting regarding the Lower Manawatu Reserve. I had that with Louise and Gordon, and also with members of the Lower Manawatu Reserve Committee. I went to a candidates meeting, a prospective candidates meeting. This was organised by CODC, by Saskia, and by Regional Council. And I thought it was very disappointing, not because of the work that Saskia and Wayne put in, but by the fact that just so few people turned up. And I don't know if that means that very few people from the community are interested in standing, but I was amazed at just how few people in the community came along and expressed any interest in standing for any of the positions. And lastly, I went to the AGM of the Central Otago Heritage Trust. It was held at the Clyde Museum and was followed by an amazing talk on the trees that existed in Central Otago thousands, million years ago, pre-European, more particularly, not pre-human trees, and dominated by coastline interest in the things. Hard to imagine when we've been talking about welding pines that these hills were in fact covered with coastline. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Around the room, are we? Okay, thank you. I too attended the Winter Stellar Astrophotography opening and echo Roger's sentiments. It was fantastic to see such wonderful talent on display. And if you haven't been, I do encourage you to go and have a look, because the photos are spectacular. I haven't actually been that busy. Valence Cottage Working Group had a meeting at the very beginning of July. We've set a couple of open day dates. Blossom Festival weekend, we're going to be, the Valence Cottage will be involved in or included in the garden tour, and then there is a plan to open again during Labour Day or Labour Day weekend. There's good progress happening in the space of telling the stories of the cottage, and with a workshop that was held with the Otago Museum actually at the end of last year. We have been working with the tech people there and some of the very creative minds who work through Otago Museum to look at different ways of telling the story. So not just display panels and static stories, but looking at creating some interactive opportunities online, virtual tours, depending on how budget and time and process involves. But it's quite exciting at the moment, sitting in that space. Couple of not off topic, but just interesting things that I've been to. The Lake Dunstan Trust had an unveiling of their Lakes project plan last week. And so there was a high-level plan unveiled to the public on the $1 million that has been granted to the trust from Williams for a 3-year project from bridge to bridge. It was actually really interesting to go to and just look at how the group are really carefully working with the community, bringing in various organisations to help them cement together a plan which considers people, the environment, the stakeholders that are involved, and then look at bringing it all together into planting and beyond. So that was actually, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And another thing that I went to just a couple of weeks ago, Why Wanaka, who are the Water Action Network, I suppose, of Wanaka, created a Communities of Practice workshop event. So bringing to life a purpose-designed workshop for people who are working in the environmental and conservation space to share knowledge, practice, resources. I just saw it as a really interesting concept. It's not a new concept, but it's just a very efficient way for people to be able to come together and work cohesively, and be interesting to see how that progresses. Certainly with talks down here with the likes of Haihaiata Natural Heritage Trust, predator control groups, and even wild and conifer groups coming together to work efficiently. I see it as a good opportunity for our small community groups to do their thing. That's me.
Thank you.
I attended a meeting hosted by a group called PACT, who are looking at alternative housing for people with disabilities in our community, which was quite exciting because we haven't really had options up till now. So that could be intellectual disability, a range of disabilities. Yeah, so they set up another couple in Dunedin, and yeah, so they're looking at community interest here. Yeah, it was really good. There would have been 20 odd people in the room. Really just to have a conversation, so it was a great starting point. So they've got a survey going around, I think, on the website. That would be really keen to hear from families who may be interested in being part of the journey. Wanaka, they've just set up in Wanaka a house in Wanaka, so we kind of go over to Alex as well. So I know, exciting, eh? Attended a meeting around mental health in Dunedin in regards to the changes with the DHB becoming a massive unit, and the loss of beds that will be, but in a new system, new beds that will be created regarding mental health when people are needing them. It looks like we'll be down to about 5. So that is not a lot for the Otago wider region. Yeah. Blossom Festival well underway. Fingers crossed that all goes well. And I guess the exciting news to encourage businesses that are in the business this year, the Blossom Festival, if a business is in the frame and has a float, then they can nominate a charity of their choice for a $750 donation to be given to that charity from that business. So thanks of Blossom Festival. So yeah, encourage your business mates to get going and then nominate charity of their choice. That's it for me.
Yes. Well, I've had COVID since the last meeting, and I attended the council meeting on the 6th of July by Zoom, and I think I drove everybody crazy trying to have my say and hearing myself and rebounding in the background. So I got almost
The technology something that we quite challenging.
so I was trying to express my thoughts over a couple of debates there, and hearing yourself in the background screaming and having COVID was just like really stressful. It's taken a wee bit of time to get over that, so I haven't done a lot else.
Well, I move members' reports. Move to second. Charlie, all in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Next item. 22.510, governance report, status reports, I should say. First item is the recent code of conduct complaint, and it's been tabled here in its entirety. I will move that report we received. Do I have a seconder? Linwood, all in favour? Any discussion? Being none? All in favour? Aye. Against?
Any discussion about the report?
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to say that that Russell's a great loss to our family.
And we acknowledged that at our last meeting.
Yes.
But now this means now that it is down the public record. So, do I have a second for that? Roger. Yeah. Thank you, all in favour? Against, carried. Right, now, status reports, there's quite a bit there of things going on. Some we discussed earlier about the ruts being on our conservation commission. We've had staff report to us earlier today on that. Is there anything people have gone through there and sort of dumped out any queries people may have?
Talking about all the reports?
Yes.
I thought, right, I noted on pages 171, 172, in regard to Kodak, the Arts Trust. So I contacted Jane Levine, who's the chair of the Arts Trust, and find out why are there no further updates, and she said that, yes, she had in fact been in contact to talk about the way it was moving forward. So it's perhaps a little bit misleading that no further update, because there have been apparently some updates having been recorded.
In addition to that, sometimes it can be a timing thing, just through the approval process, and we often do these like 2 or 3 weeks out, and they go through the executive managers, so it could well be that Paula had that conversation subsequent to the approval of that status report, so we'll note for that the next time that actually we've got that updated.
It's like a note. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Anybody else with any comments?
Yeah, just a question around Badlands, and maybe I missed this somewhere else, but I see they've withdrawn their grant application for the approved grant for signage. Just wondering if there was any explanation around them withdrawing?
No. Staff, anybody? Was it some to the resource?
Yeah, the
I understand they, had some consents to apply for, and that the track was, potentially located partially on Legal Road, and probably could have been some road stopping issues, so there were some compliance matters that were, they would not be considered, decided not to progress.
because we raised that with when the grant was, went on proviso that those resource consent issues were resolved before the grant was opened. So they've obviously.
Yes, I don't think we had all of the information we needed to be able to comment on that beforehand, which would have been helpful.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Anything else, members?
It's good to see that there's been a connection with the Central Otago Hockey and the Minor Turf Incorporated. We'll catch up there.
It's slightly happening way in the background. Well, I'll move if we accept those stage reports. We'll have a second. Lindley, thank you. All in favour? Aye. Against, carried. Please note the date of the next meeting, which will be our last meeting before the elections. And while we're still on public forum, I'm going to take this opportunity to say goodbye to the end. I did suggest privately that we would go adjourn this meeting and go for a drink, but I think being found in Monteith at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is probably not a good idea. And I just want to make a comment in public that it's been, Leanne, it's been a real pleasure working with you. You've managed to bring some very complicated subject matter and put it in a manner that lay people can understand, which I think has been a real blessing to many of us because, and Charlie, because, I'm going to use that expression, I'm not a bean counter, you are, and you've managed to phrase some of those very complex issues in a manner which we managed to grasp and understand, and we don't know who your successor is, but you will be this, and we wish you all the very best when you move to Ash Lakes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah.
Been a pleasure, being champion of BCB, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. I will move, we exclude the public. We'll have a seconder.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Charlotte. All in favour? Carry. 5 minutes, folks.